We hear a lot of perspectives on the Mankind podcast. Inclusion of a guest is not an endorsement of their views, and the opinions expressed here do not always represent the mission or values of the Mankind Project USA.
G'day and welcome to another live recording of the Mankind Podcast, the show where we break the molds of modern manhood to prove there is more than one way to be a man. And we are joined again by John Henry Parker, who joined us in episode 114. We're talking over 2 years ago now to talk about his book, Be the Dawn in the Darkness, a book born from personal grief from losing his son, Danny, and from his decades walking with men through war, trauma, identity collapse, and rebuilding. That book told his story. Now his latest work, Men Harvesting Wisdom, the 10 heroic dimensions of transformational self-leadership, well, this is different because this is not a memoir. It is a framework, a field guide for men navigating growth, change, and transition. And it's built from his 30 years of sitting with men in crisis, distilled into 10 dimensions that help answer 3 big brutal questions every man eventually faces in their lives. Who am I now? What do I do with my life? And who do I become next? John's mission has remained simple and fierce: save lives, help men thrive, and keep families together. But this book moves from personal narrative into transferable architecture, and it is an invitation for every man to harvest wisdom from his own pain and lead himself like his life depends on it. Because it does. John Henry Parker, welcome back to the show, mate.
Nice to see you.
Really great to see you. And we're lucky to be seeing you, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, man. Yeah, it's been quite the journey. It's quite the journey.
Yeah. So 7 weeks out from a bypass, correct?
Bypass surgery, yeah. They crack your chest open and they stop your heart and they grab a bunch of veins out of your leg and they put it all back together again. And I'm 7 weeks out and it feels like almost a full recovery already.
Wow.
I can tell you a lot of people aren't so lucky if they have other health conditions. And I just happen to be 100% like no symptoms. They just discovered these extremely high plaque scores, and all of a sudden they're like, "How's Tuesday for bypass surgery?"
Wow. Well, because I'm looking at you. You're a fit guy. I know you've been very committed to movement and to your health. And wow, like such a reminder to go get checked. If you're not getting regular checkups, please go get checked.
Yeah, I just briefly, it's a testament to managing chronic stress and normalizing toxic stress in your life. Like I had a very difficult upbringing, a lot of trauma, some trauma in the military. And then for the last 35 years, I worked with mostly at-risk combat vets who are in trouble, emotionally. And so being able to comfortably carry that load and normalize the stress created, and plus a lack of good quality sleep over decades, it had a buildup of inflammation and plaque in my system that I could have detected in my 30s and 40s if I was aware.
Right.
But this is a good warning to men. If you're going to go to your doctor and get your blood work done, make sure you get what's called C-reactive protein. Make sure that is a marker that you check because it's a biomarker for chronic stress that indicates you might need to get a plaque scan for hard and soft plaque.
So, yes, because I remember reading Outlive, Peter Attia, which Outlive, long book. But there was a part that, for one of the 4 horsemen being heart disease, that, when they cut them open after they've died, what they find they could have found 20 years earlier. So it's every reason to get checked. And if people have always wondered, why do men on average die? I think it's about 7 years before women do. One of the biggest reasons is women are more likely to get checked, get regular checkups, and men typically don't. So do yourself and do your family a favor and just go get a blood test. And what is it? C-reactive protein. C-reactive protein. Get that checked as well. And as a reminder, check your testicles if you haven't been already. All right. Someone in my community just found out that they found a lump down there and they could have found it a long time ago. So give it a check next time you're in the shower. Now, I want to also say, John, so episode 114, which was empowering combat veterans, how to support their journey to triumph over trauma. Wow, that episode has been shared so many times with combat veterans or people that have, survivor's guilt that didn't see combat in the military. They've gained so much from that.
There's survivor's guilt, which means I made it back, but my buddies didn't. And then there's even, I call it combat envy,
combat envy. There you go.
Yeah, for people, like my son was a combat vet. I was in the Marine Corps, and I was at a peacetime Marine, and I had combat envy for a long time because I needed to be tested, and a lot of guys do. I had other kinds of bad situations happen, but after my son came home from Afghanistan, I no longer had combat envy because I saw how bad it was for him.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, thank you for that. I love this show because we create these little lock boxes in a way, these time capsules that just get sent and shared. And there are so many men who come to our organization because of the experiences they've had overseas or within the military, their experience in the military. And it's one of those few places where they can find that camaraderie and that brotherhood, which for many of them is absent. It's missing when they leave the service. So great thing. I'm happy we're here today to have this conversation. We may very well have that same impact. Let's check in. So last we met, Be the Dawn was your book. That's what you had released, and it was out there doing its thing in the world. What's happened since then? How have we gotten to this point in this new book that you're releasing?
Well, I tell you, Be the Dawn in the Darkness, the subtitle is The Relentless Pursuit of Becoming Who We Are Meant to Be. And it's a narrative memoir. It's not a self-help book. Anytime I thought I was writing a self-help book, I would copy that content, put it into a separate manuscript, which is kind of what happened with this book, The 10 Dimensions, because I didn't want to write a self-help book. I worked for Tony Robbins and Tom Hopkins and Brian Tracy and Jim Rohn and a whole lot of people in the personal development space. I didn't want to write a book, Be the Dawn in the Darkness, like a personal self-help book. It's a visceral storytelling book about real life experiences so our men could understand, maybe through what I went through, how they might glean some lessons from it. Not telling anybody how to live their life.
Right.
But what's come out of that is, my son Danny got back from Afghanistan, and he unfortunately passed away after he got home. After all this craziness, he gets home and gets killed, in a high-speed adrenaline-seeking motorcycle accident. Well, for many years, I was helping men. I understand what's missing when you're trying to get home emotionally from your military service. And there was really 4 dimensions that were super clear to me that I discovered painfully with my son when he came back, which is identity, mission, meaning, and purpose. And after Danny passed away, I became the wounded healer for at least 10 years, where I was, if I didn't move my pain, it would eat me alive. So I started adopting at-risk combat vets out of necessity, so I could just do anything I could to try to, move this grief and this loss. And in the process, I just adopted hundreds of vets, and I'm a behavioral assessment analyst in the real world, in the corporate world. So I've been working with CEOs and companies and leadership teams for 35 years, using these same tools, these behavioral assessment tools and this mentality. But getting back to veterans, identity, mission, meaning, and purpose became the mantra. And so that's what the 10 essential dimensions morphed into over these decades. I never really told anybody, I told them identity, mission, meaning, and purpose because that's what we have, and that's galvanized within us when we go into the military experience. We have an identity. People can see it in our uniform.
Yes.
We have a daily mission where that's assigned to us. So we know what to do. And the meaning of purpose of protecting the people around us immediately, it becomes, it gives us the existential why and the existential how every day. But all of a sudden we get out and it's stripped away. So through this work, it evolved into 10 heroic dimensions. Just because of practically, I was just landing wherever the veteran was. I wasn't showing up saying, this is the formula. But it's crazy how veterans, when they can't fill up the void with drugs or sex or porn or alcohol or workaholism or adrenaline seeking, they miss the brotherhood and the sisterhood of being a veteran. They miss that every day, knowing who you are and what you're here to do, and the such deep meaning. And all of a sudden they get out, and the military doesn't tell you have to reinvent yourself. They just throw you out and they expect you to come back if they need you. And so a lot of men, a lot of women, they find themselves completely lost. They go from job to job because they can't find that camaraderie, that same feel, the loyalty. We have a mentality that you don't understand what true leadership is, and we do because we've seen it. We've experienced it. And so we go from job to job a lot of times and we just feel lost. But the instant I start talking about identity, mission, meaning, and purpose, it's like they wake up and say, well, no shit. That's what's missing. And they'll fall out of touch for 1 or 2 years sometimes because they just get so focused on who they're becoming. So those 4 dimensions morphed into the 10. And that's really what the 10 dimensions is all about. It's about a map and a compass. I'm giving men a map and a compass to find themselves when they get smacked in the face with change, or they're going through some form of transition, which happens throughout our whole life. We're either we're preparing for, going through, or coming out of some kind of transition. So I wrote this as a way, like in the military, they show you how to look at a topographical map with a compass. No matter where you are, you can find yourself within a couple of meters very quickly through a process called triangulation. Being able to look at 2 or 3 markers on the terrain, locate them on the map, shoot an azimuth from your compass, and that back azimuth tells you where you are. When you intersect those 3 points, it tells you right where you are, and that's what the 10 dimensions does.
Okay. Fantastic. So before we dive into the 10 dimensions, you mentioned about how to navigate change, and change is inevitable. And I believe that there is a part of our brain that likes to create or manufacture and maintain a set of a status quo of things. It likes to use binaries to put things in good and bad and black and white and right and wrong and hot and cold, where there's only 2 options. And so I believe we naturally resist change. But what I have learned from connecting with men and women that have been in the military is that change becomes almost a necessity in their lived experience. And that became super clear when I watched the documentary Restrepo about the soldiers that were basically holed up in this valley in Afghanistan. And the worst part of the entire experience was when they weren't getting fired at, when they were just sitting there waiting. There was that craving for change. There was that craving for action or whatever it was, because just sitting there was driving them nuts. And so I'm wondering, as someone who has not served, has not lived that life, how change kind of becomes a necessary part of the journey. But so long as there is that compass, because in the military, you have that higher up who's providing orders, providing instruction. So I can see in a way how these 10, forgive me, I'm mind blanking here.
These 10 dimensions.
10 dimensions, kind of like the hero's journey here. In many ways, these 10 dimensions, how they can be that compass.
Well, it's interesting. Men, all they know is there's a void. Most of the guys that I come across, they just have been self-medicating for so long. Like they don't deal with change and transition as much as they're pining for the past, like
Right.
remembering who you were and what you had, and you feel lost, and missing the camaraderie and the tightness and the trust and the bond. And all of a sudden you're sitting around expecting to just sit around and watch the grass grow, just and you're able to take yourself off of safety and do incredible things, and all of a sudden you're just in this
Malaise.
docile domain where you just have to be civilized. And these are all really difficult dilemmas for this warrior mentality that is ingrained in you, or at least think about it, just being institutionalized. Even if you're in an academic or some type of role in the military where you spend your time every day, you know where to show up, you got 3 hots and a cot, and you're basically, you have this identity, you have this whole mentality, you just get regimented. So just leaving that level of structure
Structure.
and discipline, you don't even think about it.
Well, because you have to now create it. You are now in charge of driving, of leading, of giving the orders as to how you put your left foot in front of your right foot and what you're working towards.
Yeah, that's just why I call it self-leader. Self-leadership is a big buzzword these days.
Sure.
Okay. And so this is transformational self-leadership, because this is really taking a good look at yourself from these different perspectives and these dimensions, and really kind of having a sense of balance and coherence. There's much more to it than that, but it's very straightforward.
Okay. Well, let's jump into the dimensions. I do want to get to the 3 brutal questions, and I know we will as we go along. But I want to share with the listeners these dimensions. There are some great graphics you have for the book, and we're going to have those linked in the show notes. But yeah, the mic is yours. Take the lead, and tell us about these dimensions, how they came about. They're very Joseph Campbell in a way. I love the stages and how they kind of flow into one another. But yeah,
Well, this is great that you mentioned Joseph Campbell, because I came across a documentary called Finding Joe.
oh yeah, so good, so good.
And I kept scrolling through it for like about a year. Like, that's a stupid title, Finding Joe, right? Some golden statue looking person on the cover. I'm like, I didn't get it.
Yeah,
And then finally, after doom scrolling for long enough, I'm like, okay, what is this? Oh shit, it's about Joseph Campbell. And
yes,
then I was like totally infatuated. And it was so interesting because I watched it on my computer, and there's this really beautiful screenshot of the heroic arc of the journey. And so I captured it, and I sat down. I said, well, what is the chronology of my life? What are the major events? So I put it in PowerPoint, and I created all these little snippets of all the big events in my life. And I had it follow the arc of the heroic journey. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then I narrowed it down, and that became the table of contents for Be the Dawn in the Darkness.
yes.
Right.
Because
And
it's a
so,
structure that we can all relate to, because Joseph Campbell sat with the Inuits of Alaska and the indigenous Australians, and all their myths and tales and legends followed the same arc. And of course, we got Star Wars because of it. George Lucas
yeah,
read A Hero of a Thousand Faces and used that same story arc to write the script for Star Wars, because it's a structure that we can put ourselves in, because we get it. There's a hero who
yeah,
wants something, but they're afraid. They're afraid. A guide comes in and helps them overcome that fear and takes them into the journey. And then they get this momentum, but then they inevitably fail or die metaphorically and then come around. So yes, could geek out on this all day, but you were able to take this, apply it to Be the Dawn. How is this
right.
transformed into the 10 dimensions here?
It's the call to adventure that every man seems to be seeking.
Yes.
Right.
A rite
That's
of
why
passage.
that's why the cover of the book is it's a map and a journey. It's a call to an adventure. What I'm doing literally on the cover, it shows I'm taking men from the land of the familiar past, and I'm helping them avoid the land of trials and adversity, so they can land on the continent over here of passionate, sustainable clarity. Now, that's a big deal. Passionate, sustainable clarity. You can be passionate and you can be clear, But if it's not sustainable, you'll be on to the next self-help book in 2 days.
Yes.
Right? Mm-hmm. So sustainability is really important for me. And to do that, you got to be really grounded. And so and I explain in Men Harvesting Wisdom, the arc of the heroic journey. I explain Joseph Campbell's work in the very beginning. Also, I explain that the skills transfer model that everybody learns in the military is incredibly relevant to this journey. It's called Learn It, Teach It, Master It. They send you through a course. You come back and you kind of understand it, but you got to teach it to your squad and your men. And so in that teaching, you start realizing, do I really know this? Do I really get it? And that transferring and the reinforcement, you start developing a level of competencies that leads to mastery. And that's how they deploy lots of knowledge rapidly, is through this skills transfer model. So I'm talking to men about, there's a built-in mentoring model. Go find somebody as an accountability partner, especially share this with younger men, okay? And then prove what you know and what you're learning in the process. So the 10 heroic dimensions of transformational self-leadership is all about the arc of the heroic journey. Okay, and I'm just going to breeze through them real quick. And if you go to menharvestingwisdom.com, it's a landing page that has a summary of all 10 dimensions. So if you're at your computer right now, you go to menharvestingwisdom.com, you'll be able to actually follow along what I'm saying. If not, just make a note when you get home, take a look at it. But really what it is, we're starting with the first dimension, which is identity. Know yourself. And there's different dimensions, which is your conditioned self. Like we come into the world of clean hard drive and all this shit happens to us called life. Okay, that's your conditioned self. Okay, all the experience that you've had in your life and all the experiences consequently that you avoid. That's your conditioned self. Then we get into your ego. Second, how you deal with reality. Your alter egos, those personas that you put on to be bigger than life, to get things done that scare you. That's an alter ego that you can don. And then the masks that we wear, right, okay, that can be detrimental over time if we live there too long. So that's identity. The next one is values. When your values are clear, your decisions become clear, especially when they're difficult.
Yeah.
So the very brief values survey where you can say, what are my values? I haven't done this in a long time. Get clear on your values. The next dimension is meaning. What is your existential why? Why are you here? Like, what is it about this lifetime that that gives you meaning? And then purpose, your existential how. How are you accomplishing your why? Okay. And then from there, it gets into self-care. Intentionally, the next one is self-care. Physical, emotional, spiritual, and financial. If you don't take care of yourself, you won't make it for the long haul. So self-care is so important. And there's different ways of defining that for each person. This is a process of getting clear on how do I take better care of myself in these areas. And we don't get into religion or politics ever. This is about spirituality, and however you choose to define it, however you choose to worship. You remember from my book, Be the Dawn of the Darkness, my great aunt Gladys.
Yes.
She imparted with me my only spiritual belief system that has ever worked for me, which is God is love. So I talk a little bit about that, but it's not about getting religious at all. The next dimension is roles and intentions. You got to get those right. I come across so many men who are separated from their spouses. They're desperately missing their kids. And boy, they've got to make up for lost time. And sometimes roles about being a father is the quickest dimension to get them present, because it impacts identity, what they value, meaning, purpose, how they take care of themselves, which bounces right up to the last dimension, which is legacy, which I'll get to in a second. Okay, so we've got these dimensions and how they kind of...
Nothing snaps, in my experience, nothing snaps a man into shape quicker than, do you recognize the potential impact on your kids based on your behavior right now and how you're showing up? And that's when they go, oh, well, I'm not telling them. I'm like, no, you don't need to tell them. They're seeing it. They're feeling it left and right. And that's the quickest way to have men, in my experience, who are fathers be like, oh, wow. Okay, gotcha. I need to clean house here.
to bring that home, man, I've dealt with a lot of men. Like I don't work with men one-on-one really that much at all anymore because my health, I just got to be exercising my own level of self-care. So I'm
Sure.
writing about my experiences over the last 35 years of doing this to help more men. Okay. So, but to your point, I've dealt with so many men who are they've run out of hope. They're suffering, and they're thinking about taking their life. And a lot of people don't realize, hey, man, suicide is a coward's way out. Think about the people you're leaving behind, and all that stuff is well and good. I've been there. After Danny passed away, I had a plan. Just didn't want to be here, and I'm the guy who helps suicidal men, and I've got a plan. I've scared myself back into reality, right? But I realized in my own suffering that that's what it's all about. Really, it's about the end of suffering. Men and women, they just want their suffering to end, and there's no other way out. Well, there is. And one of the things that I found with men, I've got this friend of mine. He's a Turkish special warfare guy, really cool guy. And he was just at the end of his rope, and I knew his daughter's name. And I finally said, because he was just like, his expression was just so grimaced and toxic to himself. I said, so I'm sorry, what's your daughter's name again? I knew her name. And he said, Grace. And I saw his forehead the wrinkles leave. And I saw a little bit of his kind of half smile when he said her name. I'm like, oh, okay, there it is. And I started, wow, were you there when she was born? Oh, yeah. And all of a sudden he starts softening up. Do you remember the first time you were holding her and she looked into your eyes and you were looking into her eyes and you're having this moment like this is your little daughter? And he's like, oh man, that was a moment. And all of a sudden I just took him into that experience and just bathed in it for a few minutes. And I'm like, I just want you to recall that just a few minutes ago you were talking about how you didn't want to be here. And now you're all warm and fuzzy about Grace.
Yeah.
Like, how you feeling right now? What's going on? And all of a sudden, he just accessed a whole different neurology, a whole different psychology. Everything about his life is like, I gotta be here, right? Yeah. So that's roles. That's the power of roles as a dimension, right? Yeah. So then the next one is vision. What's your vision of where you want to go in your life? Okay. If you don't have a goal, make your first goal finding a goal. Let's create a vision. The next one is execution. How are you going to get it done? Okay. And then the ninth dimension.
Isn't it funny, just quickly, so many men just naturally probably solely look at execution because that's natural. Men do things. I must do, but without the vision, execution is just activity and just spinning. Yet we're programmed just to left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot. And then we look back the past 10 years and go, wait, how did I get here?
Been and if your vision isn't grounded in what gives you meaning and purpose in a way that fits your values, okay, why are you going to execute self-care? Yeah. Okay. So it's just all these dimensions is kind of just cross-pollinate, right?
Okay. Yes.
And so the ninth dimension is one of the most powerful ones that nobody really talks about. It's called willingness. Willingness is not about being willing when you're willing. It's about being willing when you're unwilling. Okay.
You don't have to be wanting, but are you willing?
Are you willing? Nevertheless, I am willing. Like you're sitting under the covers with your significant other and it's nice and warm and it's really cold outside. Okay. And if you lay there for too long, your stinking thinking is going to come in and you're going to talk yourself out, not only getting out of bed, but you're going to look at, all that work that I did, that stuff never works. You're just going to have your critical mind stepping in. But willingness is about being willing when you're unwilling. When resistance, like Stephen Pressfield, The War of Art.
Yes.
Like he's one of my favorite authors, man. If so you don't deal with resistance, it will eat your lunch. It will just keep you small. But willingness, if you understand willingness, it's an inoculation for when you bump up against resistance. When it's cold outside and you don't want to get out from underneath the covers, if you understand willingness, that's why this dimension is so important. you'll sense it. You'll give your other half a hug, and you'll get up and you'll put your feet on the cold floor and start walking to the bathroom.
Lace your shoes. Mm-hmm.
So that's lace your shoes. That's the power of understanding willingness. And the last one is legacy. How would anybody even know you existed? Right? What are you doing to make a difference for future generations? And so this friend of mine that I was talking about, as soon as I talked about his role with his daughter, it lit up his identity, his values as a father, what gave him meaning and purpose, how he needed to start taking better care of himself, which bolted right up to legacy. I got to be here for her. And his whole constitution changed in that conversation. And then we were able to dig in and build a foundation of who are you becoming from here? And he hasn't looked back. Yeah. So in 35 years, I can tell you, I have not lost a man to suicide. I've lost 2 to fentanyl that didn't know they killed themselves.
Yeah.
But this is the power of this work. I'm not saving anybody's lives. I'm giving them the tools to pull themselves through the knothole.
Well, and that's what men, in my experience, gone on 10 years this year, need. They need to do it themselves. They have to. If you steal the struggle, then men won't feel like it was theirs to own. The process wasn't theirs to own. But if you give them a tool or something, a call to adventure, which is what this book is, right? It's a call to adventure, to take them from the ordinary, familiar world and to say to them, hey, guess what? If you get out of the Shire, if you get out of this Pleasantville or whatever it is, there is an adventure out there that's calling. And I know it's scary. I know there's resistance, but trust in the process. There's something brilliant around the corner. That's what men need. That's what they crave. So I love this. I absolutely love this. We've got identity, values, meaning, purpose, self-care, roles, vision, execution, willingness, and legacy. I want to ask, is there an 11th? Was there an 11th? Was there anything that got the cut that is important but maybe doesn't make the...
Man, it started as 4, and then all of a sudden 5. And then I thought, oh, there should be 7 because that's a magic number, like Stephen Covey's 7 Habits. It can't be more than 7. And then 8. And then there was 9. And for the longest time, there were 9 dimensions. And all of a sudden, oh, shit, I left out values. That's the 10th. Like, you can't do anything without values.
Values is like a Mount Rushmore. That's a Mount Rushmore like head right there. Yeah.
That was an epiphany, like stating the obvious, right? And I'll tell you, there's a quote on the front of the book, and some book designers told me you can't put a quote from somebody else on the front of a book. And I'm like, I'm a nonconformist. I'm going to do it anyway. It's my favorite quote from Mark Twain. The 2 most important days of your life are when you were born and when you find out why. That's what this is about.
Man. Yes. So this is so good. I love this because I love models. I love, and I can see why you've done this because you've got behavioral assessing as your background professionally. So I'm sure you geek out on all these things. We love to know our Enneagram. We love to know our Myers-Briggs. We love to know these things. So I'm looking at this thing as kind of like a wheel here. And I'm looking at these 10 and I'm asking myself the question, like, would this wheel roll if I truly rated myself in all these different areas? And certain areas are kind of jumping out to me right now as I'm thinking about identity, values, feeling strong, meaning and purpose. I'm there. I can start to feel the cost on the self-care part as I'm in a huge season of growth right now professionally and about to have a child in the next 4 weeks. And, baby number 2's on the way and feeling a rhythm around baby number 1 and marriage and stuff. But
how old is your first child?
She's like 3.5.
It's interesting because last time we did the podcast, you just are a new father, if I remember correctly.
You know what? That sounds about right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we're talking, that was about 100 episodes, no more, 100 plus episodes. Yeah, about 3 years. Yeah. So look at that. And I can,
cool.
And I can see myself start to sacrifice on some of these, thinking that there's like a trade-off here, or I can only have fulfillment here if I sacrifice some self-care, or if it feels like each of these 10 things is a bowling ball I'm holding right now. And it's hard to hold it all, or hard to structure it in a way that it feels congruent.
So you're at a great place to mention. I intentionally put in the front of the book, like 10 pages in, to avoid overwhelm. There's two different approaches to this work. First one, go through all 10 dimensions sequentially. But for me, that's a bit overwhelming, quite frankly. Or jump to page 209 and look at the chapter on triangulation and pick the 1 to 3 dimensions that are most relevant or that hurt the most right now. And just go look at those chapters and get some traction right now. I'll give you an example. Like in the chapter, like when your identity gets stripped away, like all of a sudden you leave the military, you retire, okay, your kids leave home for college and you're lost. You need to be needed, but you're not there to help anymore, okay? So your identity gets stripped away. So then the dimensions of identity, values, purpose. Let's just refocus on what those are about. When you're overwhelmed and running on empty, self-care, roles, execution. Think about that. When you're drifting without direction, meaning, purpose, what's your vision? Those are the 3.
Self-care, roles, execution. Okay, I think you pinned me. You pinned me on that one. What was the self-care?
When you're overwhelmed and running on empty, it's self-care, roles, execution. Like, how are you taking, like, this is it right here.
There you go.
Okay.
That's it. That's it for me. I could say right now, because I am, husband and father first and foremost, but, I've got like 12 executive cohorts and I'm facilitating, over 100 members. And not only that, outside of that, I'm building my coaching and facilitation workshops. And so I'm traveling for that. And then I've got my men's group here in town. I got 60 dudes and we meet every week for circle. And dude, I feel like I've been able to raise my floor to be able to manage this, but it's not, I've just kind of just acquiesced and gone, well, that must just be the 30s. That's what the dirty 30s or the messy middle looks like. But it's I take my gas tank to way past empty way too frequently, and it's a common challenge for me, and I don't know if that's because I'm an Enneagram 3 or whatever. That's my biggest challenge right now.
Well, I'm going to personally challenge you, Brandon. Let's have some sidebar conversations after this interview.
Okay.
Count on it. Because I can offer you some insights. This is like, I haven't studied martial arts in a long time, but my philosophy is bring it on the mat. These are all good ideas. Bring it on the mat. Show me how it works. Otherwise, it's just good ideas. Okay. This is real life. Being able to look at which dimensions apply right now and being able to dig into them. You have to start with where you actually are. And the challenge is, who cares for the caregiver? We're coaches, we're teachers, we're mentors, and we are also human going through this journey of life. And your authenticity, my authenticity, like I don't have a bio on my website. You know what it says? It says, teachers fall from the pedestals we put them on, and even monkeys fall from trees. Okay. I'm not here to teach you anything. I'm in it with you. Oftentimes failing forward. The second tenet is no gurus.
No gurus.
No gurus.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do not
Progress,
deify.
not perfection. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to hear where you're at, and I'm also excited to hear that maybe there's some value to dig into some deeper work.
Yeah. No, I'm feeling that call. That's for sure. Because there's no shortage of information of things. Couple everything I shared before. I'm addicted to YouTube, and it's not reels or shorts. It's business podcasts. It's business influencers, and I can't be in the car without something playing in the background. And man, it feels like I've got 10 bowling balls in my hand right now, and I'm trying to keep them up with, so I'm looking forward to having that conversation. Thank you. Thank you for that. I'm thinking about the man listening right now who's asking himself those questions, those three brutal questions, which are, who am I now? What do I do with my life? And who are my men? That's one piece we haven't spoken to yet, is the who are my men? Now, anyone who's listening to the show for a while, we understand the importance, and we've made it very clear about the importance of connection, not being in isolation, and actually having brotherhood established in your lives. But if this is your first time listening, I'd love to go there with you, John, about, who are my men? Tell us, why does that have to be in the book?
Well, where this comes from is, so many veterans, and especially my son. Like I just miss the camaraderie of my men, and all of a sudden you've got nothing. To kind of address this a little bit, I'm going to read to you a little bit the introduction page of Men Harvesting Wisdom. If you're new to men's work, welcome. Wherever you are, seek out men's work that resonates with you and join the campfire. Men's work is everywhere once you seek it. If you're well-traveled in men's work and leading others, welcome. We have much to learn from one another as we harvest and share our collective wisdom. Together, regardless of who we are, where we are from, our pasts, our differences, our beliefs or faiths, we are honor-bound men from many backgrounds and wisdom traditions, creating space for our shared humanity. For over 3 decades, my mission has been simple: save lives, help men thrive, keep families together. The aim of this work is to help you discover and live your life with a profound realization. Regardless of what you have been through, no matter how difficult, traumatizing, or heartbreaking, you have a deeper purpose to fulfill, and you deserve to live a fulfilling life. And as you hold this realization for long enough, my hope is that you come to a second realization. You deserve to be happy. This work is a field guide for finding what we are all seeking: passionate, sustainable clarity. The meaning of life is to find your gift. The purpose of life is to give it away. So when you think about this, especially young men, the first line of the 10 of Men Harvesting Wisdom is pretty clear: men are in trouble.
Oh yeah.
I'm just basically being really clear that men are in trouble. The old models don't seem to fit. We're trying to figure out who to be. So the only thing I could think of is how can we contribute, and coming together and mentoring other men and finding people you can trust, which may be very few people, and creating an accountability conversation, and just picking 1 or 2 dimensions that work for each of you, and just allowing the person to talk and to express and to emote and to struggle. The learning is in the struggle with this work.
Yeah.
So find men that you resonate, and men's work is out there everywhere. So I really wrote this as a call to come together. I know there's a lot of men's groups out there that are well established. Mankind Project is one of them, but there's been so many great organizations that have been born with a lot of really wonderful men that are leading it. And this is just hopefully something we can all look at as maybe a universal framework that could be helpful.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Things are scary right now. I'm not going to say the state of manhood, because that's not true, but the state of people's perception of what it means to show up as a man. You say that the old model doesn't work, and for the people it did work for, society is trying to throw it out entirely and tell them that no, You're not allowed to be a protector and provider. Well, you know, for some men, they get a lot of pride in that, yet they're being told that's not okay. And what I love about this is it's a call to adventure for men to pick up the pen and write their own story of what it means for them to be a man, and that the struggle or the messiness. I say often that men's work is messy. It's very messy. If we can create those spaces for brotherhood where men can come together and just try, just practice, just, you know what? I'm feeling called that maybe this is an extension of who I am or my personality. And you know what? I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to try it on. Well, yeah, that's what we did on the playground when we were kids. Why does that have to stop now? You don't have to have it figured out. This is version 33.0 for me. And there's going to be version 34.0 and 34.5. It changes, right? But as this, I look at these 10 dimensions as they're filling up with ink, different colored pastels that are filling up as time goes on, and I feel the vision. My wife and I, we know where we want to retire. We know that we want our kids to live nearby. We don't get that choice, but we know that we want to retire on X amount and in these areas and in the mountains or in the, so like the vision, that feels strong. And then that colors over to execution. And so I'm just seeing this as a great model that people can just, if they're feeling like they may be starting from square one, or they feel like they've gotten to a point that they ask themselves that question, like, is this it? Is this it? Look what I've created. Is this really it? Thank you for creating this, John. I'm excited to get my hands onto it more and sink my teeth in.
Well, I appreciate you, what you do. It's been a great experience for me. And, you know, I'm really clear in this work, man. It doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, what your beliefs are, or how you identify. We were all boys once. Yeah. Okay, we got that in common, you know, and that's just really what I want to focus on is the humanity. And I just briefly tell you that just a few years ago, less than 3 years ago, I was in a place where there were so many cataclysmic world events going on that were just spelling doomsday to me. Like the world is going to shit and there's nothing I can do about it individually. And I was really feeling stuck because I couldn't see the future. Okay. For the first time in my life, I couldn't see the future. All my goals didn't seem to matter. Like, why am I even writing this book? And I just kind of set it all down. And I'm like, I went into this place of like resignation for a good 3-4 weeks, you know, and then I woke up one day and I'm like, what can I contribute? And until the world actually goes to shit, I'm going to do something. And the only thing I knew how to do was this. And so I started recommitting to finishing this work. And the book is the blueprint for me. Like I just said, I just write what I know. I'm not a mental health professional, but I've been in the trenches doing transformational work with men for 35 years. And I've sat with just countless numbers of men in the worst of times, and I get this work. It's the only thing I know that I know for sure.
I didn't plan on going here in this interview, but I am deeply curious. Pulling that thread, I can't imagine that there wasn't a moment that you were talking about each of these dimensions or writing about each of these dimensions and had to look in the mirror and go, who the F am I to write about this one?
That's exactly what it's word for word, almost like exactly what I wrote. Who am I to be writing this book? I'm the guy who's writing about personal transformation. I'm sitting having a pity party, you know, and hopelessness.
Because we all go there as men. Like I know that all the time that I wonder, how am I in this room? Why am I in this room? Why do I have a seat at this table? What do I have to give? When those doubts come in and I'm in a position to have to, you know, I was in Austin just in January leading a workshop with a company there. And I remember on the plane there just being like, what have I got myself into? How on earth did I con my way into this? And It was fantastic. It was beautiful. It was amazing. I've booked him again on a retainer, but it's like that place. So what would you say as we wrap up here? What would you say to the man they know they've got something to give and they do want to leave that legacy, but they find themselves in the mirror often being like, who am I to give this to anyone?
Yeah. Every great person in existence since throughout time has had to struggle with this identity crisis of who am I to do these things? But the greatest things that have ever happened have come from good men doing it anyway.
Doing it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, and that's it. I can tell you personally, you would ask anybody in my teenage years, nobody in the world would tell you I'd be successful at anything. Like I was just wasting away. I was just lost and no education, had a learning disability. I had massive amounts of trauma and I was overcompensating. I went in the Marine Corps because I didn't want to get messed with anymore. And I just was, and that's when I picked up Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz, because he was a plastic surgeon that made people beautiful, but they were broken inside. And that was me. I was able to wear a uniform and look impeccable, but inside I just was totally crushing myself. So I walked in these shoes, man. I get it. It terrified me to write Be the Dawn in the Darkness and publish it, because these are all my journal notes about why my life was so messed up. And it never should have seen the light of day. But when I pressed send to publish that and send it to the printer was the day my life was liberated.
Wow.
Like I jettisoned all the shame, all the self-doubt, and I gave it away to the world. And I said, it's out there. What are you going to tell me? I'm an idiot? I wrote about it. I've heard this before. Like you got to do it anyway. That's my advice, man. You got to, you're here for a deeper purpose, and it's up to you to find it.
So I shared with you in the beginning, I recognize we're coming up to time, but I shared with you before we went live that my wife and I were in a plane incident on the 31st of December, 2025, New Year's Eve. And I share this because one of your points in the book is one of the most powerful ideas being like, you can harvest wisdom from your pain instead of being mastered by it. And I remember it was only 10% of the time, but it was vivid to me that like the question, oh, is this it? Is this where we go? It's been a good life. See you later. And it's amazing what happened in the month or so. It's kind of the fire's kind of tempered a little bit of just none of the bullshit stories I was telling myself prior to that flight were landing. They weren't kicking in. They weren't pulling the strings. Because it was like, wow, am I going to let those stories have more power over the potential impact I could have going forward that I get to provide that I otherwise wouldn't have if that plane went down? And I'm not saying that every man has to go through play in traffic to figure that out. But it was definitely an aha to go, wow, I got to rip the megaphone out of that stories or that belief system's hand, because it's no way near as powerful as the potential impact I could have if I just proceeded imperfectly without a perfect plan.
You just opened up a new chapter that was not even available because you're so busy being busy, right? All of a sudden you've got this existential experience of something bigger for you.
Well, and I needed to get that out because I feel like I've just put many of the bowling balls down because I just need that reminder.
Oh, man. It's amazing. As busy as you are, I am, everybody listening to this is, what do you do without your schedule? To come out of this bypass surgery and look at my schedule and have nothing in my calendar for the rest of my life was astonishing. Mm-hmm. And I'm not putting that stuff back in that was causing me stress. And I'm just so, so happy to be here.
That's a choice. That's a choice you're making. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
John, mate, we got to do this more often. We can't let that much time go by before we have you back on the show. I'm not saying you have to write another book. I'm saying we could definitely go deeper on the teachings of this book, and wishing you a wonderful journey as this book goes out there and spreads the word and gets put in men's hands. We're going to, of course, have links to it in the show notes so that you can order a copy of your own. Men Harvesting Wisdom, the 10 Heroic Dimensions of Transformational Self-Leadership. Get your hands on this field guide and find what all men seek. John, absolute pleasure. Anything else you want to leave with the guests before we wrap?
No, just I'm looking forward to hearing their stories, and the app. The book is the blueprint for an app that I'm building.
Okay.
So
Fantastic.
you'll be able to have a reminder app that's going to be helping these dimensions come to life and keep active. And it's all about, are you being who you said you were going to be, and are you doing what you said you were going to do?
Beautiful. Well, John, absolute pleasure, mate. I will say till next time. And of course, the greatest thanks goes to you, the listeners who join us each and every week for this, the Mankind Podcast, the show where we break the molds of modern manhood to prove there is in fact more than one way to be a man. And I'll just throw this in there because I never do. Do us a favor. Hit the subscribe button. Go ahead and give us a starred rating. I'm not going to give you the whole spiel for 5 stars. If it's 4 stars, give it 4 stars. But we appreciate you guys putting in the word to spread the message. And the best gift you can give if you've enjoyed this episode is to share it with someone. Lots of love. We will see you next week. This has been another episode of the Mankind Podcast, produced in association with the Mankind Project USA. We have been your hosts, Boyson Hodgson and myself, Brandon Clift, and we want to thank our guests for joining us today and imparting their wisdom from their experiences in this amazing journey called life. If you want to find out more about today's guests and support them in their mission, you can find links to them in the show notes. Now, if you have found gold and insights that you believe could benefit your loved ones and those you care about, be sure to share it with them. And of course, we are always grateful for a rating and review of the show on iTunes. Now, above all else, we've got to thank you, the listener, because through your attention and your support, you have made it possible for us to let men all over the world know that they are not alone and that there is more than one way to be a man. And if something in this episode has touched you, then perhaps it is the call to action to get involved in men's work. With live trainings happening constantly and in-person trainings happening all over the world, the Mankind Project definitely has something for you. Now, if you've enjoyed the music in this episode and all of our episodes, be sure to check out Jim Donovan and the Sun King Warriors. I have links to them in the show notes. And lastly, just know, what it means to me to be a man is completely different than what it means for you. That is the beauty of this journey. So if you are looking for guidance, support, and community as you begin to unpack and dive deeper into your men's work journey, then you know where to find us. Same place, same time, next week. Lots of love. We'll see you then.
Hey, it's Boyson. On the Mankind Podcast, we've brought some incredible guests on to talk about the importance of doing the work to improve our mental and emotional health. And here's the truth. Multiple times over the last 25 years, I've had the help of one-on-one work with some amazing therapists. For me, for my wife, for both of us as adoptive parents, and for our kids. The Mankind Project and Men's Group, though awesome, are not a substitute for professional mental health support. And so I'm thrilled that the Mankind Podcast now has BetterHelp as a sponsor for the show. BetterHelp works online. It asks you what you're working on and then matches you for live one-on-one sessions with a licensed therapist, someone trained to work with you, listen, and offer helpful insights. I'm using BetterHelp. It's super easy, and I like what I'm getting. If getting one-on-one support in the comfort of your own space feels like a good direction for you, I invite you to check it out. Go to the link in the show notes or betterhelp.com/mankind And if you sign up, you'll get 10% off your first month of therapy.